buddy. I am there for you. 158 days to the most important election of our lives. Countdown every day on my show. And by the way, Sirius XM, where my show is on, is free through the end of May. So check it out. Come on over to Sirius XM, the website. Just click on free streaming, start streaming, and listen over my show, channel 127 Progress. So 158, that's how many days in the most important election of our life. And every day, including today, Donald Trump gives us another reason to get angry to defeat this man. And today it had to do with his horrific reaction to what is going on in Minneapolis, which he actually encouraged more violence and threatened to kill people there because they weren't doing what he wanted. And he threatened to do this by quoting a white Southern white supremacist sheriff from the 1960s. But first, so we're going to go through in my show in more detail. A short time ago, the Minneapolis police officer, former police officer, Derek Chauvin, was arrested and charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter for his role in killing George Floyd. At the outset, let me say, that is not justice. Justice is when all four police officers are involved. And we saw a new video today with at least 3 of them with their knee on Mr. Floyd when he was down on the ground. But all 4 police officers involved, not just charged, not just tried, but convicted and imprisoned. That is justice. That also sends a message to other police officers that this conduct, when you kill black people or anyone of color or anyone wrongfully of any background or any color, you're going to go to jail for it. And that's not the usual circumstance in our country. Police tend to get away with it. That's the key, though. So from the actual complaint that was made public a short time ago, and it's a short complaint, but I went through it and a few things that really jump out. We'll go through this again even in more detail on my show tonight, is that the officers they were called because they claim that Mr. Floyd or someone who was with had spent a counterfeit $20 bill. That's what this whole thing was about. An allegation of distributing a counterfeit $20 bill. And look where we are now. Now, in the actual complaint, it goes into some detail about the officer's action with Mr. Floyd. Talked about Mr. Floyd was compliant, but then when they wanted to put him in the car, he said he was claustrophobic. And that's when not a resisting happened. Mr. Floyd, they, according to the police, dropped to the ground, didn't want to get in the car. And that sort of led to the situation where the cops were on his neck and his chest with their knee, especially the officer that was charged with murder right now. It talks about in the actual complaint, and I'm reading right from it, it said, Mr. Floyd said, "I can't breathe," multiple times, and repeatedly said, "Mama," and "please" as well. This is probably the most stunning part of the complaint. It says at 8:24 p.m. on Monday night, Mr. Floyd stopped moving. At 8:25, the video shows Mr. Floyd ceasing to breathe or speak. At that point, the officer took his pulse. And the officer in the complaint, it states, said, "I couldn't find one." Even though Mr. Floyd was not just unresponsive, but he had no pulse, the officer, Chauvin, stayed with his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for 3 more minutes. And the media is reporting that he stayed on his neck for 3 more minutes after being unresponsive. No, look at the details of the complaint. He stayed on his neck 3 minutes after finding no pulse. And as the police complaint actually says, when the officers found no pulse, the response was, none of the officers moved from their positions. That's the exact words of the complaint. So not only was Mr. Floyd unconscious, he had no pulse, and they still remained on his neck for 3 more minutes. And at no time in any video did we see any effort to revive Mr. Floyd. Well, if they called it in, a man was under distress, but there was no sudden urge to save a man's life because they didn't view Mr. Floyd as a human being. This is the essence of the issue before us. It's that black lives are not valued like white lives in our society. I cannot believe, and I doubt you would believe, that this is a white man, Mr. Floyd. First of all, we would have not got to this situation. But secondly, I'm sure they would have tried to revive him. Now, on my show tonight, I want to play some clips from 50 years ago and then much more current that give you a sense this struggle by African Americans for not just dignity, not just equality, but to have their lives simply valued has been going on since longer than 1966, but I got a great clip of Martin Luther King in 1966 on CBS 60 Minutes talking about what the goal is, equality, having their lives valued. And flash forward 50 years later exactly, Colin Kaepernick in 2016, taking a knee in his first interview afterwards, almost using the same words as Martin Luther King about police brutality and about something has to change here. And what was Donald Trump's response to this? He tweeted saying the thugs in Minneapolis are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and then added, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And those were the words of Miami Police Chief Walter Headley in 1967, a man who openly defended police brutality, who openly defended the police stopping and frisking black people and treating them less than human. Is that random? Donald Trump quoted that man? Of course not. That was by design. That's what Trump is about. His history tells us this. This is the man who called for the death penalty for the Central Park Five, and after they were exonerated by DNA evidence, what was conclusive, he still would not apologize. In fact, they suggested they are still guilty. This is the man who discriminated against African Americans when they wanted to rent from his property. This is a man who, even as president, when Colin Kaepernick took a knee to protest the very brutality that took the life of Mr. Floyd, what was Donald Trump's reaction? He called the black NFL players sons of bitches and said they should be fired. In fact, he went on to go to the Long Island Police Department, not even far from here, and talk about police being not so nice, encouraging police brutality. And more than that, in 2019, when Donald Trump could have done something more than words, actual policy, to make it clear police brutality is not accepted. And that was the case of Eric Gardner, who also said, I can't breathe. His case was before Bill Barr's DOJ for possible civil rights violations against the officer. And last July, not even a year ago, Donald Trump's DOJ declined filing any charges, saying it was a tragedy, but not evidence of a crime. This is who Trump is. Over and over, the situation Donald Trump has shown us, and things have not changed with Donald Trump. They have not changed for the black experience in this country. We're going to talk about that and more on the show, and I hope you'll join us again tonight through the end of the month. SiriusXM is free. Come on over. We have a great show today. Some great guests to talk about this very issue in a very honest, brutally honest way. They share their own life stories. I have 4 guests on tonight to talk about this issue, and I hope a way that opens the eyes of white America about what African Americans have been going through for decades and with their own lives. So thanks for tuning into my little preview of the Dino Bidala Show. Go to SiriusXM channel 127 Progress. Tune in tonight, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It's free. Call in, be a part of the conversation. Love to hear from you, or drop an email with your ideas and suggestions, dean@deanofradio.com. Thanks for tuning in to my little preview of the Dino Bidala Show.